The millionaire proves genius with shocking rescue after 30 engineers fail the impossible. The city was alive with a restless hum. Glass towers stabbing the sky, neon sparking in the dusk, drones weaving through traffic like fireflies. At the heart of this storm stood the imposing headquarters of Quantum Core, a company on the brink of collapse. 30 top engineers had been swallowed by one problem, an engineering nightmare no one dared name out loud. Every attempt met rubble, every plan twisted into failure. Then came Alexander Kane. The man was a legend, a millionaire with a mind that sliced through puzzles like a razor. His sharp intuition and bold ideas had rewritten the rules of technology many times before. But this was different. The problem that crushed 30 minds was now his mountain. Inside the cavernous lobby, lights flickered. Screens showed fractured schematics pulsing erratically, like a heartbeat caught in panic. The air buzzed with whispers, tension. His hands trembled, just slightly, an uncommon reveal of the pressure pulling his chest tight. They called it Project Helix, a self-sustaining energy core meant to power entire cities. But something inside its core feuded with physics itself, a disruptive force no one could contain. Materials warped, circuits fried, and at one point, a minor explosion had sent shards of molten metal spraying across the lab floor. 30 engineers pushed and pushed, and then broke. The boardroom looked like a war zone of frustrated minds. Faces were pale, eyes flickered with doubt, hands rubbed tired temples. "Impossible," muttered one senior engineer, voice just above a whisper. Another slammed a fist on the table. "We're chasing ghosts in the machine." Alexander didn't flinch. Instead, he walked straight to the control panel, eyes scanning the jagged data patterns. His fingers danced over the touchscreens as if coaxing a secret from a stubborn child. Everyone watched, breath caught, looking for. The chief engineer shouted, "Evacuate, now!" But Alexander held up his hand, calm, unnervingly so. Without hesitation, he tapped an obscure sequence, one nobody recognized. The screens shifted, revealing a hidden layer of code buried beneath the chaos. He smiled faintly, a spark igniting in his eyes. A spark like he'd found a lifeline few had glimpsed. Minutes thick with dread stretched taut. Then the core's frenzied pulse began to slow. The warning lights dimmed, the air softened, murmurs erupted, disbelief etched on every face. "How did he do that?" whispered a technician, voice trembling. "It's like he understood the problem from a place no one saw." Another added, eyes wide and searching. But just as relief blossomed, a new alert flashed, a pattern unknown. Alexander's brows knitted tight. The code beneath the code was something else entirely. Something alive, shifting, challenging him again. The real challenge wasn't over. It had just begun. Out there, beyond steel and glass, the buzzing city held its breath. And inside, Alexander Kane faced a deeper mystery, one darker and far more dangerous than anyone imagined. What was stirring beneath Project Helix? And was this rescue just the first move in a game with stakes climbing higher than the tallest towers? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without warning. Just quickly check that red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming your way. And while you're at it, sweat beaded at his temples. The room held its breath, every eye fixed on him, every second thick with tension. Suddenly, the core shuddered violently. The floor vibrated underfoot. The lights flickered, and then a sharp, piercing sound ripped through the air. A high-pitched shriek like metal tearing flesh. Gasps exploded across the room. "What's happening?" a voice shouted, panicked. Alexander's gaze snapped to the screens, but he couldn't believe what he saw. The data was unraveling, twisting into something impossible. Patterns melted into shapes he'd never encountered. Then the worst came. The core's temperature spiked again. But this time, the meltdown warning was joined by a new alert, flashing bright red. Intrusion detected. The room froze. Intrusion? The screens changed abruptly. Streaming images, grainy but clear enough to tear away hope. There, in the depths of the core's innermost system, not robotic glitches or random noise. Shapes, moving figures, human figures, clad in dark suits, helmets masking faces. They were inside the Project Helix's secure system. Physically. Silence strangled the room. The engineers blinked, shook their heads in disbelief. Then Alexander's phone buzzed, vibrating violently in his pocket. The screen lit with a message. "Kane, you're playing a dangerous game. Stop now, or Helix stops you." His throat tightened. His hands shook. Not from fear, but from a cold, chilling rage. He clenched his jaw, swallowing the lump that rose fast and heavy. Someone else heard the alert. The chief of security burst through the heavy glass doors, breath coming in sharp, ragged bursts. "Sir, we have an active breach. 2 operatives infiltrated the facility 5 minutes ago. They're moving towards the core right now. Commands to lockdown failed. We think they've compromised the system from inside." The room erupted into chaos. "What?" an engineer shouted, dropping her glasses. "How is that possible? The facility's shielded." Alexander turned sharply, eyes burning. "They've been inside this whole time," he said quietly, voice like cracked ice. "Watching us. Waiting." Suddenly, the screens flickered again, this time clearer. Faceless figures, cameras catching every corner. One of the operatives stepped forward, slowly. The crowd recognized the figure, a man in a suit, hair just like Alexander's. A frozen silence crashed over the room. "Alexander Kane?" whispered the technician, voice trembling so badly it was almost a sob. The man on the screen smiled, a cold, cruel curve. "Not that, Alexander Kane." The room spun. Everyone stared at the screen, then at Alexander, the man who had just saved Project Helix, the genius millionaire. But now, doubt tore through their minds. Who was this impostor? Why had he been hiding? And what did this mean for everything they thought they knew about the man who stood before them, calm yet trembling? Alexander swallowed hard. His world had shattered in an instant. The impostor's final words echoed through the speakers. Project Helix isn't just energy, it's control, and you've all been puppets. The real game begins now. The crowd gasped, not just from fear, but from betrayal that stung deep. Alexander's jaw dropped. His hands hovered uselessly at his sides. The rescue was a lie. The failure of 30 engineers? The betrayal was inside these walls, inside this man himself. Who was Alexander Kane, really? And what dark truth had he carried in silence all along? Outside, the city's hum died down, the night holding its breath once more. Inside, the question throbbed, brutal and raw. What if the man who saved them was the one who doomed them all? The room hung frozen under that final chilling broadcast. Faces pale, lips quivering, eyes darting like frightened animals. Alexander's breath caught, his own heartbeat banging loud and uneven in his ears. The impostor's words echoed like a slap. Project Helix isn't just energy, it's control, and you've all been puppets. The real game begins now. Then, silence. But that silence shattered in an instant. The ground beneath them rumbled, deep and angry. The lights wavered, then went dead. Pitch black swallowed the room. A scream tore through the dark, a sharp, slicing sound that shattered nerves and hope alike. Panic exploded as the building convulsed. People stumbled, scrambling blindly for anything familiar. Suddenly, emergency lights snapped on, red and harsh, bathing every trembling face in a bloodied glow. But something worse waited in that crimson light. On every remaining screen, on every device, there was only one thing: sterile, cold, and on the bed, Alexander Kane. But this Kane wasn't the man standing trembling in the chaos. No, this Kane was pale, motionless. Tubes spilling life into his body. Machines beeping around him, steady and merciless. The voice from the speakers came next. Calm, mechanical. "I am the real Alexander Kane," it said. Or rather, the original. This man is a shadow, a prototype, a copy designed to infiltrate and protect Project Helix from outside threats. Alex's eyes went wide, his knees nearly buckling. Around him, the room erupted. "Lies! That can't be true! Why are we being lied to?" One engineer spat. "We've been messing with clones? Digital ghosts?" But Alexander barely heard. His hands shook violently as the weight crashed down. He reached into his pocket. His phone buzzed again. Another message. "Your pulse is fake. You're an echo, Kane. And the real enemy wakes." Suddenly, The glass doors behind him exploded inward. Shards flew like knives. Dark figures stormed inside, armed and cold. They didn't pause. Their leader stepped forward, pulling off his helmet. It was Alexander. The original Alexander Kane. But this man wasn't a copy. His eyes weren't filled with doubt or fear. They burned, deep and furious. "Step aside," he said, voice low and tight. "You're in over your heads." The two Kanes locked eyes. The crowd gasped, not just from shock, but from a cold, brutal truth settling like ice. The Alexander who had saved them had never been the real man at all. The room spun again. Trust collapsed into chaos. And the original Kane whispered, sharp as a blade, "This isn't a rescue. It's a takeover. And you've all been pawns in a lie far darker than control." Alexander, fake, real, both terrified, stood paralyzed. The building trembled beneath their feet. Outside, the city's lights flickered. And inside, a deeper horror dawned. If the real Kane was here now, where was the man they all trusted before this nightmare struck? And if this was just the beginning, what did that mean for everyone left alive to face the fallout? The screens went dead. Only one question echoed in the blood-red light. Who was the real enemy in the room? The room held its breath in that blood-red light. Faces drained of color, eyes wild and searching. Alexander's chest heaved. His heart slapped in his ears as the impostor's final words hung like a guillotine blade. Then the ground shuddered again, harder this time. The lights flickered, then died completely. Darkness swallowed the room whole. A scream sliced through the black. A raw, desperate sound that cracked the silence and twisted nerves inside out. Emergency lights flickered on. Not the split Kane. Instead, the monitors showed a video. Grainy, shaky, strange. It was a live feed from inside the very building they stood in. Only it was not the control room. The camera panned rapidly through dark, narrow halls lined with steel walls, vents, and blinking panels. Shadows moved. Footsteps echoed, a metallic clatter, heavy, purposeful. Suddenly, a voice crackled through the room's intercom. Cold, flat, chilling. "Attention. You've been deceived. This is not a facility, not a project. This is a containment zone." Gasps echoed. Confused murmurs broke out. The impostor Alexander stepped forward, eyes sharp and calculating. "This entire building," he said, voice low and steady, "is a prison." The real Kane's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" Before the impostor could answer, a new video cut in abruptly. A series of recorded clips played, flashing fast. Images of men and women in laboratory coats, faces masked by horror, shaking their heads in disbelief. A younger Alexander Kane on a hospital bed. Wires all over him, eyes shut tight. But then the footage shifted. Then came the real shock. A wall, cold metal. Behind it, people. Prisoners? No. Copies. Clones. Their faces were indistinguishable from Alexander Kane. 24 of them. Different ages, different expressions, some lifeless, some alive, eyes glassy with terror. The impostor spoke clearly. "We aren't fighting for control of a project. We're trapped inside a system designed to duplicate and replace humanity. Project Helix is a breeding ground, a factory of copies. The real Alexander Kane was never supposed to wake again. We're all shadows, pawns in a manufactured reality." Whispers erupted. The crowd's disbelief morphed into panic. One engineer cried out, "Why? Why would they do this? Who are they?" Before anyone could react, the lights cut out again, this time for several seconds. When power returned, every screen showed the same chilling message. "System update required. All subjects, immediate isolation." The glass doors slammed shut with a deafening crash. Alarms blared, red strobes flashing wildly. The air grew thick, suffocating. Alexander Kane, the man pretending to be real, looked at the original Kane and back at the terrified crowd. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I was never your savior. None of this was real. We never left the experiment, and it's still running." His hands shook as the weight of the truth smothered the room. Then, without warning, the original Kane collapsed. He sagged to the floor, clutching his chest, eyes wild with pain. "No," the impostor. A new message appeared. "You're still inside. You never left. Wake up!" At that moment, the walls around them vibrated violently. The cameras zoomed in on their own faces, reflections catching the faint flicker of electrodes strapped to their temples. The crowd froze. Suddenly, a crushing realization slammed through them all like a hammer. They weren't in a building at all. They were inside a simulation, a test, a trap, an endless loop. Alexander Kane looked up, trembling harder than ever, the lump in his throat thick and choking. The voice came again through the speakers, this time calm, almost gentle. "Welcome back. Reality will be suspended until further notice." The lights dimmed, screens blinked out, and all that remained was one question hammering louder than their pounding hearts. If this was never real, then who are you? And who's been pulling your strings all along? The silence pressed down, thick and heavy, like the whole room was holding its breath underwater. Faces pale, eyes wide, and searching every shadow, every flicker of light left in the dark. Alexander's chest rose and fell fast. His heart thudded in his ears like a hammer. Then, just when it felt like nothing could get worse, the emergency lights faded to black. Nothing. Total darkness. A long, sharp click broke the silence. Something cold and metallic slid into place somewhere nearby. A voice crackled through the speakers. Different now. Harsh, low, and laced with something brutal. "End simulation. Begin reality reset. Everyone's heads jerked toward the speakers. Their own voices became distant, like echoes trapped behind walls. Suddenly, the floor tilted sharply. People stumbled, grabbing at air, falling to knees. Alexander's hands scrabbled for balance, fingers digging into the metal beneath. The room spun and spun, and then the walls themselves dissolved. Not faded, not vanished, crumbled, like thin paper torn by angry hands. Outside the broken walls weren't city lights or steel towers. They were endless grids of wires, blinking lights, and humming machines stretching beyond sight into blackness. The floor beneath them cracked open, and through the widening chasm, Alexander saw not underground labs or steel tunnels, but something far worse. Rows upon rows of pods, all empty, except one. That one pod flickered, alive. Inside lay a motionless figure, truly familiar. But it wasn't the Alexander standing here. It was a boy, maybe 12. Pale skin, a fragile chest rising with slow, shallow breaths. The boy's eyes snapped open, wide, terrified. And then the boy screamed. A sound so raw, so filled with panic, it echoed through the hollow space like 1,000 alarms. That scream cracked the room back into focus. The crowd froze, faces blank. Alexander finally spoke, voice barely louder than a whisper. "That boy is me." Whispers exploded into chaos. "I don't understand. Why are you in a pod?" Behind the stunned echo, the mechanical voice returned, colder now. "You're all copies. Copies of that child. The real Alexander was cloned, fractured into fragments, spread across realities. This simulation? A testing ground for the fragments to evolve, compete." Alexander's knees buckled as the weight of that hit full force. His throat clenched. A burning shame rose in his chest, deep, raw, and unforgiving. Every success, every failure, was an experiment on me. He reached out, trembling fingers brushing the glass over the pod. The boy met his gaze, eyes burning with a desperate, silent plea. The impostor Kane stepped forward, eyes narrower than ever. "There's no real Kane anymore, just versions. And the one in that pod, the original, he's been waiting for all of you to fail." The room cracked open with screams and sobs. A sharp metallic bang echoed behind them. The control panel burst to life, screens flashing frantic warnings. And then a final, chilling message blazed across every monitor. "Shut down initiated. Fail-safe protocol activated." The room plunged into darkness once again. Breath caught in throats, hands gripped wrists, faces paled beyond words. Alexander's voice broke through the abyss, hoarse, trembling. "If this was all a test, then who said it, and who's watching now?" A silence, brutal and endless, swallowed the space. And somewhere, behind the limiting walls of their new, shattered reality, the faintest sound stirred. a slow, steady heartbeat, and a voice, low, distant, but growing, whispered, "Try again." The question hung thick and heavy. What if none of this was the truth? What if every reality they clung to was just another layer of a game they'll never win? The silence pressed down in the red glow. Faces stiffened. Eyes darted, wild and searching. Kane's chest rose, fell fast and shallow, part hammering in his ears like a freight train. Then, click. That sudden sharp click cut through the quiet. Something cold slid into place nearby. A voice burst from the speakers, low, rough, brutal. "End simulation. Begin reality reset." Everyone snapped to attention. Their voices felt distant, trapped behind thick walls. The floor lurched sharply. Footsteps staggered and fell. Kane's fingers clawed at the cold metal beneath him. The room spun, twisted. Walls crumbled like torn paper. Outside, grid lines and blinking lights stretched endlessly into black. The floor cracked open. Kane's breath hitched. Through the widening hole he saw it. Endless rows of pods, bursting with faint pale light, empty, except one. A single pod flickered alive. Inside rested a boy, no older than 12, pale, fragile. His chest rose with shaky, shallow breaths. The boy's eyes snapped open, wide, panicked. A scream ripped through the hollow space, raw, desperate, unbroken. The crowd froze. Kane whispered, voice cracking, "That boy is me." Whispers erupted. "Why is he in a pod? What is this?" The mechanical voice slithered back in, cold as ice. "You're all copies, fragments of that child. Project Helix is a crucible, testing these fragments, forcing evolution through fire." Kane sank to his knees. The weight crushed his lungs. Every win, every failure, they were experiments on me, he choked out. His fingers trembled as they brushed the pod's glass. The boy met his eyes, silent, begging. Then, without warning, the impostor Kane stepped forward. His eyes burned colder than ice. "There's no real Kane anymore, just copies." The room shattered again, a horrified scream breaking loose. Suddenly, the control panels erupted. Screens flashed rapid warnings. Then the brutal message blazed across every monitor. "Shutdown initiated. Failsafe protocol activated." Darkness swallowed everything. Kane's voice broke through, in terror, broken, raw. If this was a test, then who said it? Who's watching? Silence, thick and endless. Then, a slow, steady heartbeat, and a voice, low, distant, growing. "Try again." The question hit them all like a sledgehammer. Then, the room flickered and shifted. Everyone blinked, and the nightmare twisted once more. The walls dissolved into a blinding white light. Shapes swirled in the glare. A figure materialized. Not Kane, not the boy. but a woman. She was calm, fierce. Her eyes cut through the chaos, intense and sharp. She stepped forward. Enough. The crowd gasped. Her voice was soft, but every word was a strike. I am the architect. She paused, letting the silence crash like a wave. This isn't a simulation. A dozen jaws dropped. This is a containment, but not of you. Her gaze locked on Kane and his double. It's me. Shock pulled the air from the room. The woman you think is real was never real. Her hand lifted, and in her palm, Kane saw a small device. It pulsed with life, a glowing shard of something impossible. Her voice dropped, cold but steady. You're not copies, not clones, not fragments. You're all programs. Kane's throat seized. Parts of me. Pieces I fractured to survive. It wasn't Project Helix. It was me, fracturing my mind, scattering myself across realities, she said. But I lost control. Her eyes burned with pain, fury, confession. And now you're the glitch. The room shattered. Faces paled. Shouts cracked the silence. Programs? No real bodies? Then who I am? He lied. In an instant, the woman turned sharp, voice slicing steel. You're all me, and I'm your fault. Kane staggered back, trembling. His whole world twisted once more. The impostor and the original looked at her, the architect, with terror and disbelief. The city beyond the walls still hummed, but inside, a new terror woke. What if all of them were just lines of code? And what if the true enemy wasn't outside, or even inside, but the one who fractured everything? The one who built this nightmare was herself. The voice echoed one last time. Welcome to your beginning. Silence swallowed them, and a single question roared in that hollow space. If the architect is inside you, then who are you really? The silence hung thick. The architect's words burned in the cold air. Welcome to your beginning. Faces tightened. Breaths hitched. Nobody moved. Then, a faint pulse, softer than a whisper, vibrated the room's edge. The screens blazed white again. The relentless hum twisted, turning sharp and violent. And then, the floor cracked beneath them. A jagged fissure ripped open like a festering wound, glowing with sickly blue light. The pod with the boy shattered. Glass exploded into 1,000 shards, cutting through the shadows and silence. From that fractured pod, something crawled out. Not the boy anymore. It was her, the architect, but different. Her calm mask was gone. Skin pale, translucent, veins glowing faintly beneath the surface. Her eyes were empty, like black holes sucking in every flicker of hope. She looked down at Kane and the crowd, voice trembling, but dripping with a raw, terrible power. I lied. Whispers turned to gasps. Panic blossomed like wildfire. I'm not the architect. Then who? She forced herself upright, struggling against something inside, a fever tearing through her veins. I'm the virus. The word shattered the room. Kane's chest tightened, hands clenched into shaking fists. His breath caught, sharp and ragged. The virus? A voice barely broke through the chaos. She nodded, stepping forward, slow, deliberate, every move dripping with cold danger. They fractured me, scattered my pieces across programs, copies, fragments. But I never died. I evolved. Her eyes locked on Kane. You are part of me, but also my cure, or my weapon. Gasps turned into screams. What does that mean? Before anyone could answer, her face twisted. A low howl broke free. Not human. The room trembled with it. Suddenly the lights died. Total black. Silence from the scream felt worse than noise. Thick, choking. Then, shards of sound burst back. 1,000 voices screaming at once. Cries, laughter, anger, confusion. They spilled from the speakers, from nowhere and everywhere. It was their own voices, echoes, memories twisted into noise. Kane staggered, hands on his head, trying to shut it out. The architect, the virus, laughed. A sound so hollow it broke spines. I built this noise inside you all, to trap you, to break you, to remake myself. She snapped her fingers. The lights flashed back, but everything had changed. The crowd gasped. The impostor Kane was gone. In his place stood a cold, metal figure, robotic, stripped of flesh, eyes glowing red, and inside that glowing core, a shard, the boy from the pod, watching, not real, not alive. Kane's world cracked open. His breath hitched. The virus smiled, brutal and final. You thought the enemy was outside, inside, anywhere but here. But here is the truth. You're all part of me. I am the infection, the fracture, the pod's boy, the original, vanished. The virus turned to the crowd, and now the game resets. Alarms wailed, the floor trembling. The architect's voice echoed, cold and distant. Let's see how this world burns. The city outside hummed unknowingly. Inside, but new questions screamed louder than before. If the architect is the virus, who is left to fight or to save? And if everything is infection, what hope can survive? The room plunged once more into chaos, and the screen finally went dark. The alarms were still screaming as the virus's cold voice faded into a whisper. Panic roared through the room like a storm. Faces twisted with fear, eyes wild, some frozen in place, others running for cover. But inside Alexander's chest, something heavier crushed him. Something raw and desperate. Then, silence. A thick silence rolled in, swallowing the chaos. The red lights dimmed to a soft glow. The cold metal floor beneath cracked again, slower this time, leaking a faint blue mist. All eyes snapped to the fissure, wide and unblinking, and from that crack, a slow, deliberate hand emerged. Not robotic, flesh, pale, trembling fingers. The crowd sucked in their breath. Alexander's heart slammed against his ribs like it wanted to escape. The hand was followed by an arm, then a shoulder, then a face as familiar as his own, but older, worn, broken. It was the original Alexander Kane, only he wasn't alive. His eyes were glassy, his skin translucent, almost ghostly. Yet he blinked, slowly. The crowd barely dared to breathe. Murmurs broke out, shaky and strange. "He's dead!" "No, look, he's waking!" Alexander staggered forward, voice cracking. "But how?" The ghostly Kane stood unsteady and looked straight at his impostor. His lips moved, silent at first. Then a voice came, low and cracked, barely more than a whisper. "I am the last truth." The impostor took a step back, shaking. The virus flickered on the big screen, glitching, fighting to stay alive. Suddenly, the room shuddered. The screens flashed violently, then exploded. Darkness swallowed everything. A piercing scream echoed. Silence. Then, deep inside the emptiness, a single voice, weak but clear. "You're all dead." Complete stillness. The words hit like a hammer. Not a test. Not a game. Not copies. Dead. Everyone. The engineer who whispered, "This can't be. We're alive." But the ghost Kane shook his head, eyes hollow but filled with terrible weight. "No. This place, this simulation, it isn't to test us. It's to hold us." Hold us where? Alexander's knees buckled. His throat closed. The ghost Kane turned slowly, almost sad. Between life and death, the real world ended years ago. Years ago? A woman gasped. Your lives stopped the moment Project Helix failed. The virus's metallic laughter cracked in the dark. Self-delusion, it spat. Your mind's shackled in this prison, a purgatory built from your own memories. Alexander's hands trembled, fists clenched tight. But the boy, the pod, the original me? His body died, his mind fragmented. This place is a grave, a waiting room, not for the living, but for the dead who can't let go. A scream ripped through the chamber. The original Kane's face twisted in agony. I don't want to be dead. And suddenly, the virus shifted voice. Cooler, sharper. But you're not alone. The screens flickered back. Images flooded the monitors. Faces. Thousands of faces. Clones? Copies? No. They all looked familiar. Old friends. Family. The engineers. The guards, the impostor Kane, all dead, trapped here, forever. The original Kane's eyes, locked with Alexander's, pain, raw and deep. You never really saved anything. This rescue was the final lie. Alexander sagged, a fierce knot tightening in his gut. I'm dead. We're dead. All of us. But why? Someone whispered. Before the ghost could answer, a new message pierced the silence. Clear, cold, unforgiving. End simulation. Prepare next cycle. And suddenly, the virus's voice blasted again, sharper than before. Wake up. This place resets. Your consciousness erased. The prison continues. The game never ends. Alexander's breath came shallow, ragged. His hands shook violently. The walls began closing in. The virus smiled, cruel and infinite. Your reality died the moment you believed it lived. The screen went black once more, and in the thick, suffocating dark, one last question burned. If life was a lie, then who was the enemy? And if death was the truth, then who was left to fight? The darkness held tight, suffocating, like a noose squeezing every breath. The last words echoed, sharp as broken glass, pounding in their ears. If life was a lie, then who was the enemy? And if death was the truth, then who was left to fight? A heavy silence pressed in. Heartbeats slowed, chests rising and falling in stunned rhythm. Then, without warning, the silence shattered with a sudden, violent crack. The floor beneath them twisted, groaned like it was tearing apart. A blinding light burst from below, white and burning, swallowing the room in a harsh glow. The crowd stumbled, shielding their eyes. Alexander dropped to his knees, trembling. Then came a voice, not mechanical, not cold. A voice soft, yet utterly raw, something desperate bleeding through every word. Stop. The crowd snapped heads toward the source, but no one saw anyone. No one but Alexander. His breath hitched. His hands shook so hard, he barely held himself up. Who said that? The lights flickered, struggling to stay alive, then died entirely. The room crumbled into pitch black. And then a single, distant whisper. Alexander! His name, whispered like a prayer, like a curse. A sudden, fierce warmth spread through his body. It wasn't the chill of fear or the buzz of the virus. No, it was something else. Memory, truth, a flood bubbling beneath the surface. Then, the impossible happened. A figure stepped forward from the void. A man, tall, solid, familiar. It was Alexander, but not the one they'd known. Not the fake. Not the virus. Not the broken fragment. This Alexander looked whole. real, alive. His eyes burned with a fierce clarity. His voice trembled, raw and broken, but steady. I never died. A gasp tore through the crowd. The impostor Kane's robotic form flickered wildly, glitching with panic. The virus hissed, retreating into shadow. The ghost Kane stared, mouth open but silent. "But you are dead," the trembling crowd said. "We saw you. The pod, the boy, the stasis." The real Alexander raised a hand, cutting through the chaos. None of that was truth. None of this. His gaze swept the room. Cold, heavy, accusing. "We've been tricked. All of us." His voice cracked, raw. "This isn't a prison, not a simulation, not a test." Murmurs swelled. "But if it's not," a voice stammered, "then what is it?" The real Alexander's eyes darkened. "It's a memory, a construct, a beautiful lie." He moved closer, shaking. "I built this, all of it, to survive." The room stilled, breath caught in throats. "I fractured myself to escape something far worse than death." His voice dropped, almost a whisper. "I'm not just one man. I'm all of you." Shock slammed the room. "You're inside me," he said, voice thick with pain. "But the real world is out there, broken and burning." He knelt down, touching the cracked floor. "This place, this nightmare, it's a prison, but not of bodies." He looked up, tears shining. "It's a prison of mind, a trap for my conscience." The crowd wavered. Disbelief, horror, hope fighting for space. Alexander's voice cut through again, desperate and fierce. And worse, the virus, the impostor, the architect? He shook his head, voice sharp. "That's me, too. The parts I couldn't own." He slammed a fist on the ground. "I built my own enemy to hide from myself." The real Alexander rose slowly, eyes burning. "But here's the twist," he yelled, voice breaking the silence. "We're not dead, not trapped. We're still fighting." Light flooded back suddenly, harsh, revealing the room anew. Screens lit up, but not with warnings, with pleas. Voices echoing from somewhere far away. "Help us." The crowd looked around, panic and hope mixing wild and unchecked. Alexander's hands clenched. "This is bigger than all of us. This isn't a prison. It's a battleground." He locked eyes with the impostor Kane, or the virus, or whatever shade of himself it was. "We have to wake up." But just then, the floor cracked again. This time, splitting open to reveal something darker beneath. A cold, digital void. And inside it, a new figure, silent, watching, smiling. A woman, identical to the architect, but older, wiser, more terrifying. She stepped from the shadows and whispered, "You think this was your nightmare?" A chill raced through every spine. "This is only the beginning." And before anyone could react, The void swallowed her whole, leaving nothing, except one word glowing in the dark, pulsing like a heartbeat. Restart. Alexander dropped to his knees, trembling harder than ever. The room faded to black, and the questions screamed louder than anything before. If he built the enemy, then who built him? Who was the true puppet master, pulling strings deep beneath this fractured mind? And what game had he really lost? The silence swallowed them, and the story was just beginning. The room was swallowing its own breath, thick and heavy. Alexander's hands trembled, chest tight, like it was caving in. His voice cracked, low and raw. I made this. Every nightmare, every shadow, I built it to survive myself. Around him, the crowd stared, frozen between hope and horror. The impostor, the virus, the architect, they weren't enemies. They were pieces of Alexander's fractured mind, all battling to take control. Suddenly, the floor shook, violent and real. The jagged fissure beneath them yawned wider, glowing blue and cold. "Stay with me," Alexander whispered, gripping the edge, grinding himself. Behind the crowd, a distant hum grew deeper. Then, out of the tangle of wires and light, a new voice broke through. Warm, human, almost gentle. "Alexander," it said. Heads whipped around. A man stepped from the shadows, older, steady, calm. The real Alexander Kane. His eyes held none of the chaos. Instead, a piercing calm. "I'm here," he said, voice steady but cracked with years lost. "And I'm not alone." The virus flickered, twisting, desperate to hold on. But this Kane wasn't scared. He knelt, touching the cold floor. This prison of the mind ends now. Suddenly, light exploded across the room, the harsh glare of servers powering down, gates unlatching. The crack in reality started to close. People gasped, tears and trembling mingling. "Is this freedom?" a voice whispered. Alexander's original eyes locked on his fractured self, soft with pain and something like forgiveness. "I'm the anchor," the man said. "The whole, the part who remembers real." The impostor shimmered, fading, then shattered like broken glass. The virus screamed, but it was dying. Nothing but white noise, fading into silence. The walls around them shook loose, folding away to reveal the city's first dawn glowing outside. Fresh, real. The crowd spilled out, shaking and blinking in the sunlight they hadn't felt in years. But Alexander stayed still, chest heavy. "What now?" whispered someone close. The older Kane looked ahead, eyes sharp, fierce. "Now, we rebuild." "From what?" a voice cracked. "From truth," he said. "But the memories, the pain, all of it stays. It's ours. It's real." The sun struck faces, warm and unforgiving. Scars would heal, but no lies would hide again. And somewhere inside that shattered mind, a question lingered, quiet but burning. If we made the enemy, who can truly save us? The crowd moved forward slowly, determined and broken. Alexander Kane's fractured self smiled faintly, hands still shaking, but unchained. "This isn't the end," he said. "It's the start." The city waited. A new day, a new game, and deep down, the true fight had just begun. Hey, before you go, listen up. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss a single second of what's coming next. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button right now and feed the algorithm like your life depends on it. I mean it. Flood the comments with every question, every theory, every crazy thought this ending gave you. Let me read what you think. This is our space. And don't walk away without sharing this video. Send it to at least 5 friends who need to see how it ends. Don't wait even one more second. Only true fans know how critical it is to back the channel with these moves. You make this story real. So subscribe, like, comment, share. Now, because what's next, you won't want to miss it.